Allison from American Ghost Walks. If you're new to this channel, please hit the subscribe button below and the little bell icon, and then you'll never miss a new video. Today we'll talk about a scandal that has haunted author Catherine Crowe for over 150 years. You may remember Catherine Crowe as the investigator who conducted the first paranormal investigation. She is also the author of arguably the most popular book on the paranormal in history, The Night Side of Nature. Although Catherine Crowe's work has been largely forgotten today, she's the reason that you know the word poltergeist. Although she made significant contributions to paranormal study, you may not know about Catherine Crowe today because of a scandal that still overshadows her legacy. It involves an incident in 1854 that is at best exaggerated and at worst largely fabricated by mean-spirited masters of 19th century snark. Rumors began to circulate in early March of 1854, alleging that Catherine Crowe had been found wandering the streets of Edinburgh near her residence. She was out of her mind, and most shocking of all, naked. As the story goes, she was locked away in a madhouse. Several versions have surfaced over the years ascribing various kooky details to explain her nudity, such as the idea that spirits had duped her into believing she was invisible. Let's separate fact from fiction. Catherine Crowe most likely did not look like this. She was 64, so she may have looked more like this. This is what we know for sure. Evidence suggests that it was none other than Charles Dickens who first spread these rumors, at least in writing. In a letter to the Reverend James White, dated March 7th, 1854, he has this to say.
Mrs. Crowe has gone stark mad and stark naked on the spirit rapping imposition. She was found t'other day in the street clothed only in her chastity.
On March 9th, Dickens wrote another letter to his friend Emile de la Rue, stating,
There is a certain Mrs. Crowe, usually resident in Edinburgh. She was a medium and an ass, and I don't know what else. The other day she was discovered walking down her own street in Edinburgh, not only stark mad but stark naked too.
In April, when the story hit the press, it was no surprise that it first appeared in The Zoist, a publication edited by Dr. John Elliotson, a friend of Charles Dickens.
A well-known authoress has gone stark mad and stark naked on the spirit rapping. She was found the other day in the open street, as her mother bore her. She is now in a madhouse.
Total Dickens move.
Many writers have repeated this questionable account for more than 150 years. These writers retold the story largely verbatim, without question, or asked the wrong questions. The question is not, was Catherine Crowe naked in public? Who cares? The question is, why did Charles Dickens and John Elliotson resort to such a scornful ad hominem attack? Well, for that you need to know that Dr. John Elliotson was a prominent mesmerist. Mesmerism, or animal magnetism as it was once called, was a controversial practice. Today we call it hypnosis, a modernized variant of mesmerism. Charles Dickens, as it turns out, was a big fan of mesmerism and even experimented with it on his friends. In 1854, the popularity of mesmerism was challenged by the newer spiritualist fad. As a result of this perceived threat, the Zoist, a mesmerist publication, did its best to portray spiritualists as misguided dupes who were often driven mad by their obsession. When talk about Catherine Crowe's mad exposure, as her friend Robert Chambers described it, came to Dickens and Elliotson's attention, it was too good to pass up. Even though Crowe wrote in glowing terms about mesmerism in The Night Side of Nature, later she had also shown an interest in spiritualism. A scandal about the foremost paranormal author succumbing to the evils of spiritualism is perhaps just what beleaguered mesmerists thought they needed to win back the spotlight. It was too late, of course, because the concept that the spirits of the dead are all around us had captivated the public, and at that time there was no way to defeat the burgeoning popularity of spiritualism. When she saw the allegations in the Zoist, a friend of Catherine Crowe's, activist Sophia de Morgan, tried her best to set the record straight by writing Dr. Elliotson in a letter to the editor. She explained that Catherine Crowe
did not perceive the feverish attack coming on, and in consequence was seriously delirious for 2 days. The attack was removed by a very simple dose of medicine, but in the meantime, some of her friends, believing her to be permanently insane, had her brought up by a night train to Hanwell. Dr. Conley soon saw that she was not a fit inmate for this place, and assisted her in extricating herself.
This unfortunately only resulted in additional snark from Elliotson in future issues of the Zoist. But Dr. Conley, who treated Crowe, confirmed De Morgan's comments in a letter to George Combe, a mutual friend. Dr. Conley wrote of Catherine Crowe on April 2nd, 1854, summing up the case with this simple sentence.
When she came here, her delusions had passed away like a dream.
Dr. John Conley was the superintendent of the famous Hanwell Asylum and the leading mental health expert in England at the time. My search of Hanwell Asylum records revealed that although an admissions list for that time period does exist, Catherine Crowe's name is not on it. She was never actually admitted to Hanwell. But what would modern medicine have to say about Catherine Crowe's case? Instead of relying on my own judgment, I consulted an expert. Brendan Masulo is an author and parapsychologist. He's also a licensed therapist. This is what he had to say about the case.
The paranormal world know me as a parapsychologist, but actually my training, I did study at the University of Edinburgh for parapsychology. And I've worked in the mental health field for approximately about 20 years, maybe 19 years. I've had all kinds of positions in the mental health field, most notably in the emergency rooms for one of the leading hospitals here in Ohio. And in the emergency room, one of my roles was to do crisis evaluations on patients. In the case of Catherine Crowe, to my knowledge, in talking with you briefly, she didn't really have any history of psychiatric issues. And I think we all believe that we'll never have sort of psychotic symptoms. But the case is delirium can happen to all of us, from a medication to sleep deprivation to infections to illnesses. It could happen to us, pneumonia. These are all things. Changes in medications, drugs, things like that can cause delirium. There is a difference between delirium and mental health issues. I mean, delirium is basically impairment, cognitive disturbances, hallucinations, disorganized thoughts, change in personality, aggressiveness. But these things are often brought on by a medical condition. And that's what delirium is. And delirium can happen to anyone. I've seen patients in the emergency rooms who took very common medications who would present with auditory, visual hallucinations, even tactile hallucinations. The woman had felt like there were bugs crawling all over her, and she had some paranoid delusions as well. And this was all from a very common medication she was prescribed. Other cases, we would often see patients in the emergency room with a common, especially the elderly, with urinary tract infections or UTIs. These would cause sometimes delirious type symptoms, confusion, disorganization, agitations, hallucinations. And, the causes of delirium, I wasn't a medical guy, I'm not diagnosing it, but from my experience working with ER physicians and psychiatrists, oftentimes they would have to rule out if someone presents with hallucinations or delusions or manic behavior, disorganized thoughts, all these types of things. One of the things the ER does is really parcel out what's going on. And it doesn't always have to be mental health or schizophrenia. Delirium is another possible reason. From everything that I've read and seen, it doesn't seem like insanity. It seems like she had delirium. I don't understand why anyone would not believe that when she says it. If she doesn't have any previous history of it and no history afterwards, it seems likely that it was an isolated incident of delirium. And it was treated. Once she was better medically, she didn't have any of these episodes again.
I have been for some time suffering from chronic gastric inflammation. I was taken ill on the 26th of February, and was certainly for 5 or 6 days, not more, in a state of unconsciousness. During this aberration, I talked of the spirit trapping, and fancied spirits were directing me because I was writing on the subject. But I was not, and am not, mad about spirits or anything else.
I think it's fair to say that whatever happened in 1854, we can put it to rest. All reliable accounts show that it was a short-lived episode, most likely due to physical illness. Catherine Crowe would live for another 22 years without incident. She continued to write thoughtful articles and books, including Ghost and Family Legends and Spiritualism and the Age We Live In, both published in 1859. During the making of this video, I realized that descriptors such as mad, crazy, insane are not medical diagnoses. These adjectives are put-downs. Today we realize that whether or not a person is mentally ill does not determine their value. We value individuals based on their contributions to society and the quality of their work. Let's value Catherine Crowe by reading and appreciating her groundbreaking work, which laid the foundations for parapsychology and paranormal study as we know it today. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.